So we have had this conversation in varying degrees literally for years. Do you renovate the PMAC? Do you build a new arena? If you build a new arena, where do you build it? Who pays for it? And for the first time, maybe ever, it feels like it might actually happen. Like there might be real traction behind it now. Keli Zinn, LSU's executive deputy AD and COO, is good enough to join us for a couple of minutes. Keli, thanks for the time. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Thank you, and thank you for the time. Let me just start with a big picture question, then we can go kind of narrow. How realistic do you think it is that we might actually see LSU get a new basketball arena sometime in the relatively near future?
Yeah, I believe it's very realistic. And I say that because, we've recognized as there's been more attention on this externally in recent weeks, that a lot of people didn't know the extent of work that's been done up to this point. And I say that because we've been prepping and planning for this for over a year now, and really working pretty aggressively to get to this point. And so I believe it's very realistic, and it's something that folks are going to see here in the future.
So, about a week ago, there was a big conversation with the Board of Supervisors. Can you just catch us up to where everything stands right now, maybe in the most simplistic, big picture umbrella way?
Sure. Where it stands right now is, and the next juncture for us to pass through is on March the 13th. You may be aware that there's an ordinance that is slated to be voted on, which essentially says in the event that a new arena opens up, that there will not be a competing interest in the area relative to concerts and entertainments and potential revenue opportunities within that venue. Once that passes, and I say that because we're hopeful that it is in fact going to get approved, at that point, the next step is to move to an RFP, and we're ready to go immediately on that to select a developer who will build, own, manage, and oversee the arena that we're seeking to bring to LSU.
An RFP, of course, is a request for proposal. Essentially what you're saying then would be like there would be a non-compete where the River Center, for example, couldn't bring in acts. If there's a new arena, anything would go to this new LSU arena. Would LSU be working hand in hand with the city parish, or is this just independent completely of the River Center?
Yeah, no, we're working with multiple parties who are involved in this. Everybody from the Baton Rouge Area Foundation, the Baton Rouge Chamber, Visit Baton Rouge, the mayor, you name it. We've worked with a number of parties up to this point, and part of the reason for the ordinance is there have been a number of studies conducted up to this point, and one of the things that we've recognized, aside from the fact that there's clearly a void for entertainment and concerts within the region, it also appears that the River Center may be better utilized as a potential for conferences and convention space. It appears that there's a potential for a headquarters hotel there. And if you think about it in the context of that coming to fruition, what that does is it creates a continued opportunity for business in downtown. Right now, if you're just capturing the entertainment and concert space, you're arguably attracting people for one night. If you're bringing in folks for conventions and conferences, you're looking at 3 to 5 days that they're going to spend here. And so you're talking about, more heads in beds and an opportunity for hotels, more retail and economic development that right now we're not realizing. And so we had the opportunity to look closely at how much activity was taking place within the River Center over the past year. It's been minimal. And when you look at the upcoming year and the programming that's planned, you see even more of a decrease. And so I think there's an opportunity for both of these things to thrive. And the other thing that's good about it is things can move forward simultaneously, right? Our pursuit of the new arena wouldn't harm the efforts to allow the River Center to be reimagined and to move forward as well.
And Keli Zinn is our guest. One quick follow-up. When you mentioned the River Center, and this may be outside of your purview, when you talked about the River Center maybe being sort of modified for conferences, are we talking about the main arena or the annex of the River Center?
We're talking about the main arena, that the infrastructure that exists there. If you essentially took out the bowl, you have roughly 28,000 square feet of space that could then turn into that convention space. And then you would have the opportunity to attach a headquarter hotel to it.
Interesting. That's so the idea here is obviously to be able to draw. Do you know, Keli, why more big acts and concerts don't come to Baton Rouge? Obviously, New Orleans and Lafayette tend to get the lion's share of those draws. Why is Baton Rouge passed over for things like that?
Yeah, I don't know that I can necessarily speak to that on behalf of all the artists and what exists, but at the moment, you don't have the infrastructure in order to do that. So take, for example, and when we first started looking at the PMAC, right, part of the reason that we decided not to renovate the PMAC and instead seek a brand new arena was a result of the inability for that structure to have that revenue stream. And so what top artists are seeking when you're looking at AV and infrastructure and hanging video boards and all these other bells and whistles that exist in some of these other venues, it just doesn't exist here. And this would allow us to have something of that magnitude to attract those acts.
How much would a new arena cost?
You're probably looking at roughly $350 to $400 million.
Okay. And how much might, and this is speculative, obviously, how much might that change depending on how long of a process this may be?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. History shows us that for every year that passes, it's going to cost more. But I think that's where, and with us being poised to move very quickly and seek to get some shovels in the ground, I would hope that if we can accomplish that within the next 5 years, you won't see a significant cost beyond what I just shared with you.
Okay. The next most gigantic question is who pays for it?
The developer would pay for that. So they would assume the financial responsibility for that venue, and the funding on it would essentially shake out in a way where they would get all revenue from concerts and entertainment, from tickets to concessions, etc. LSU would retain the revenue that exists specifically to the competitions from our sports. And so we would retain all of the ticket revenue, concessions, parking, sponsorship, really all the areas of revenue that we have right now in our current infrastructure.
So would LSU be a lessee?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Would LSU be leasing the arena for whatever events it may, basketball, baseball, or not baseball, obviously, basketball, gymnastics, whatever events it would host?
There's a possibility for that. We haven't, obviously not having a developer, identified the specific terms of it, but we would essentially live in that building and function in it for the times that we have contracted, and then they would retain the additional days for all of their programming. You're likely looking at what we would expect to be a 30-year lease, and then after that 30 years, it would go to the university.
Wow. Okay. Wow. So just to be abundantly clear, this isn't like we've seen with past developments where TAF would fund it and LSU would own it. This would be an independent, a third-party developer that would build it and ultimately lease the space to LSU for those basketball games or whatever else would be hosted there.
That's correct.
So where are the proposed sites that this would be built?
Yeah, that's part of what we will learn within the RFP. So they'll be expected to tell us and select the preferred site that it will be located on. Up to this point, we've identified a few locations that it could go, which that too is encouraging, right? There's not just one place to put it where we believe it could be successful. There's a couple options there. And so we hope to know that here within the next, probably 5 to 6 months.
Would one of the options, I've just what I've heard, closer to the river, like where Tiger Park is, over near Alec Box Stadium around the golf course, the current location, are those locations being considered? Not? Are there other? What can you tell us?
Yeah, so you referenced there over by the current LSU golf course near the baseball stadium. There's obviously a ton of opportunity there with the amount of acreage that would be available on that site. There's also some land that's located between Burbank and South Quad. If you can recall that green space that exists there, that appears to be an option. We looked at one point, the possibility of relocating our current track and putting it there adjacent to the current PMAC. That's probably unlikely because in order to relocate the track, you're looking at both a cost and a timing that's just not favorable to this. But there are a number of options that exist, and already understanding that there have been teams that have expressed interest in this, we know that they're taking a close look at all of those sites.
A couple more minutes with Keli Zinn. I find this fascinating. I mean, Keli, you got to understand, we've had conversations about the basketball arena here for decades, and this feels like the most real it's ever been. What would happen? Would anyone continue to occupy the PMAC?
Yes. We believe that the current PMAC would still exist, but would largely cater to practice and operations facilities. In other words, we are going to need a place for our teams to be able to practice at their leisure and on their time. We're in need of some upgraded space for strength and conditioning, athletic training, and we desperately need office space. We've outgrown the inventory that we do have, and so that's a real need. As I noted earlier, the key to a developer being able to fund a project of this magnitude is they have to have a pretty significant number of days to host these concerts and entertainment opportunities. And so on those days that the building would be assumed through those events, we're going to need a place to practice. Yeah. And the current PMAC sets up to allow us to do that. So similar to what you see in football, where they practice, operate, train, all of that within the football operations center, and then on game day they go to Tiger Stadium. We see the possibility for something similar here, where the PMAC would be a big piece of that, and then this would be more of a competitive arena.
How many events does the LSU athletic events does the PMAC host every year?
You're looking at anywhere from 60 to 70, roughly. You could reduce that a little bit or add to it depending on a given year, but our inventory tells us roughly 60 is a number.
So in theory, there would still be plenty of days for other events for a venue to host with some.
That's correct.
280, 290 other days out of the year that they could host. This is pretty fascinating. Keli, I know we're looking at March the 13th when there will be the ordinance vote. Assuming this moves as we expect, what is a realistic time frame if LSU, and understand construction, things happen, like there's a lot of hurdles to clear. What would be a realistic time frame for LSU to be operating and functioning in a new arena?
Yeah, we believe 5 years is realistic, but I can tell you that we're going to move aggressively to try and even reduce that schedule. And so if we can get in there in 4, that would be incredible. But the time period that we're looking at that we can feel comfortable in is within that 4 to 5 year range.
Under promise and over deliver. Love that. She is Keli Zinn, Executive Deputy Athletic Director and COO at LSU Athletics. Keli, is there anything else I haven't asked that people need to know?
The only thing I would say, and you'll see this as part of the information surrounding the ordinance, is, we really do see this as a community facility. And you're obviously talking to a representative on behalf of athletics, but I think if you had conversations with other folks that are attached to some of these other opportunities that exist in this space, they would tell you that we very much want and a priority for LSU is to really link into the community. And so numerous parties are working together in collaboration to support one another and enhance Baton Rouge. This is a piece of it, but we really do see it beyond the world of athletics as a community facility that will be really beneficial to a lot of parties.
Keli Zinn, this is enlightening, exciting, fascinating, encouraging, a lot of things, a lot of ings, maybe. Thank you so much for the time. And as this moves along, we'll keep in touch.
Absolutely. We appreciate it.